So many thanks for joining, everyone. It's good to see some familiar faces as well as some new faces here today. And today we're going to be taking you through basically some research findings from a recent piece of work we conducted and around the care sector, of course. So first of all, I will take you through a bit of housekeeping and the agenda. So just to make you all aware, this session is being recorded. So do let us know in the chat if that's an issue for anyone. And also, while either Paul or I are talking, please try and stay on mute. And we obviously will have discussion opportunities, so you can come off mute then and chat with us. So the agenda, I'll give you a quick run through about CACI. I know some of you are familiar with us, but some of you aren't. Then Paul will take over and take you through new approaches on location strategy. And we'll then have an opportunity to discuss. Then we'll move on to cost of living, another opportunity to discuss before a wrap up and next steps.
Sorry, I was guilty of moving my mouse there. There we go.
So, in terms of a research overview and what we do here at CACI, so we work across the care sector with providers of dom care and home care and also care home operators, all the way through to the NHS itself, as well as local authorities. So what we do is provide data and insights to those organisations to support them with decision making on key issues around marketing and development, location strategies, of course, as well as new issues that are arising more and more, such as recruitment and staffing. So in terms of the research itself, what we did was asked over 1,000 people across the UK about their perceptions of care. But we also really wanted to dig into what their sort of key motivations were when assessing care for either themselves or a member of their family. So what are those key factors around price, location, preferences on facilities, etc. Crucially there, we also wanted to ask those who either had some exposure to care through a family member or themselves, as well as those who had no exposure to the care sector. So that was really important for our analysis, being able to split out those two groups. Thank you. As further context to the research, of course, we're all well aware that the last 2.5 years have been particularly challenging for the sector. Since the height of the pandemic, there's been lots and lots of shifts throughout the whole sector landscape. And of course, new legislation and other key things have been coming in that have affected how care providers in general have to operate. So we were really keen to sort of take a step back and really assess what's changed and what's had an impact on people's views of the care sector. So the objectives that lay behind that were obviously, first of all, to build that full view of public perceptions and how the pandemic shaped it. But crucially, off the back of that, generating new ideas and new approaches for the sector. We're quite aware that there's quite a lot of established thinking and preconceptions around location strategies, marketing, etc. in the care space. So we thought this research would be a really great opportunity to sort of reassess what exactly people are thinking about from a public perspective to inform some new approaches. And that will obviously come through in large part through these sessions as we try to make these findings actionable for operators and providers of care. So this is the first session that's coming off the back of this piece of research. And this is really your first opportunity to discuss any findings that we present, any key challenges that you're facing in any of the areas that we do discuss, and also challenge our findings. So if there is anything that you think isn't particularly relevant or isn't what you've seen in as a provider of care yourselves, then please do raise it with us. We'd love to hear what your particular challenges have been or how that differs from the research we've conducted. And then ultimately, This will support growth across the sector, we hope, and uncover how these new challenges that we're facing can be overcome through collaboration between ourselves and all the operators and providers of care we have today. So, without further ado, I shall hand over to Paul, who will take you through our first section, which focuses on location strategies.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so thanks, folks. So yeah, as Tom says, we've done a whole load of research. There's far too much stuff to go through in this one session. So I'm just going to focus on a tiny bit of the findings today that we think have a fundamental impact on how location strategy is approached in the sector. So as he says, we'll do other sessions that hopefully unpack more of that, and we'll talk about at the end. Okay, so I'm going to focus primarily on this question here that we asked. So we asked people, it was a representative sample of people aged over 40, and we asked them what will be the most important factors in deciding on the accommodation that you choose for a loved one's care. So we've asked it in two different ways. So I'm going to start by focusing on the loved ones. Okay, and what we see is that the number one answer that was given in this question was 62% of people saying that they would choose a location that was close to a family or loved ones. Note, the closer the family or loved ones, rather than the actual person who needs the care when choosing a care setting. Now, this response was quite exciting for me as a geographer and also as a CACI location strategy consultant, because the number one response we got was a geographical answer. It wasn't about quality of care or value for money, but it was actually about location and proximity. Now, I genuinely must stress that nobody asked would have known that we're a location strategy company. We didn't load the responses. It came out as an anonymous questionnaire. But what's also really interesting here is that it is not about proximity to where the residents live that came out top. It's about proximity to those who support them. Now, is this just us being selfish when we're asked that question and wanting to minimize our efforts for our older relative? Well, let's now see how we respond when we think about our own future and our own care. So we ask the same people this same question, but this time, rather than the blue blob, which is the loved one's care, it's when planning for my care. And what we see there is, if I get my mouse pointer up, whilst it drops back a little bit, it still remains a key factor when we're thinking about our own futures. So it's also what we want for ourselves, and not just people being selfish and reducing the effort of care for others. So if the number one answer when asked about choosing accommodation is that one, I'm afraid it's audience participation time. So just to get you using your Zoom chat, if you go, I think to the top of the screen, you should have a chat option. I want you guys to type in, what do I want you to type in? I've forgotten. What do you think will be the number two? And no, that's not what I want at this point. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry, try again. If proximity to the supporting loved ones and families is top, which of these factors do you think is the one about proximity to the actual residence home? So I want you, that's what I wanted you to do. In the Zoom chat, type in the number that you think is the one, the response of, I want to find accommodation that is close to the actual person who needs the care. So put a number in. If you think it's number 2, type number 2. If you think it's 13, type 13. You have a few seconds, type it in now. Don't be influenced by other people. I'm going to try and get the screen to actually show me the responses because I'm interested to see what you say. So go for it. Okay.
Got quite a good range here.
Okay, there we go. Thank you for being quicker at answering it than I was at asking the question. So we got various got 3s, 5s, got 9s, got 5s, got 3s, another 5, 9. Okay, well, I should probably reveal the answer that it comes in at. Let's get my clicker back up there. Go on, we can do that. Yeah, comes in at number 6. So proximity to the resident's current home is a distant 6 when thinking of both care of our loved ones and for ourselves in the future. So it's not actually even close to first. It's 16% of people gave that answer compared to 62 for our loved ones, and 12 for ourselves, compared to 57. So that's a stark difference, and maybe shows how much we need to think about where those loved ones live now in a world where families move far and wide. So now you might be like me and thought, well, what do these people who we've asked the questions actually know? They're thinking of the future. They haven't actually ever had to make these decisions, which is okay, fair enough. That's always a risk in any sort of survey about intent. And again, that is why it was important when we did these questionnaires that we actually asked people if they already had friends or family or loved ones already in care. So we asked the same question again, and we've split it between those who already have people in care and those who don't. Okay, so the same question, close to residents' existing home. The pink is those who already have loved ones in care. So yes, we are seeing that significantly more people with than without a loved one in care say that proximity to the resident's home is important. So to a point, maybe there is a bias in this answer, but let me build again. This is the answer for those with or without loved ones answering that question about close to the resident's existing home versus close to a family or loved ones. So what we can see here in response is for those who already have loved ones in care, so the pink, proximity to a loved one is more important than the actual resident's existing home. So it is still the number one factor, whatever bias there is in there. So let's go back to the previous chart. This is where I was going to go. And let's see what else is driving people's decisions on their care accommodation. So this is when it's audience participation time again. I want you guys to type into the chat, what do you think numbers 2 and 3 are? Okay, so type into the chat what you think number 2 and 3 will be. And again, I'll look at the responses. This is starting to feel a little bit like an episode of Pointless, getting you to type these in. We're not looking for a pointless answer. We are genuinely looking to see what number 2 and 3 are. Rachel's gone facilities and price, got price, reputation, cost and environment. Okay, price and brand from Gav. Okay, probably just about everyone through. Okay, so let me move my mouse point. Yeah, reputation from Aidan. So the response answer was number 2 came in as quality of accommodation. Seems sensible. Number 3, I saw a number of people put price, and we wrap that up in various ways of asking the question, value for money or affordability. So those are the top factors. And clearly these are essential and they underpin so much of your strategies, time and investment. So you've kind of picked up on those ones in your answers. So if those are the confident answers that you would have expected in number 2 and 3, that gives us some confidence in where number 1 and 6 fall. So just so that you know, and we will share these slides afterwards, by the way, this is all of the responses that we got right down to number 13, which is other, which is good that we actually put the other in the right place. So I'll just pause for a second and let you look at that. Okay, so in a couple of minutes, we'll open up the discussion and get your views on these responses. But firstly, let me just wrap up this section before we discuss it further. So in my view, what we're seeing here is 3 clear tiers of decision-making factors. In the green here, in the Premier League, we have close to family or loved ones, the quality of the accommodation and some element of price or affordability. That feels like it makes sense. Then, if that's the Premier League, we move down into the Championship, or if you're as old as me, you'd call it the second division, which seems more logical. So the second division is quality of staff and the facilities available, and a rather nebulous one around it just felt right for the needs of the individual moving. Okay. And then, and I'm not going to read through all of these, we then drop back further to a clear third tier of sort of more nice to have factors. Now, it's only at this point that this group is led by proximity to the resident's home, but it lags a long way behind the other critical factors. So before we go into a little discussion, if this is the case, why is so much weight given to the age of the local population in location decisions for locating care homes? Why is so much marketing spent to the addresses of the actual elderly person themselves? And why is there potentially saturation of care homes in areas with the highest densities of targetable older populations? So, could people be refocusing their site finding and targeting on areas with more of the decision makers' locations than the residents themselves? And that's one that we'd like to discuss in a minute. But firstly, I just want to end this section with one more slide, which is this one. So what we're seeing here is we ask the question of who is the main decision maker in making decisions about care. And what we see here, if I can get my pointer up, is that the actual resident themselves only make the decision a quarter of the time. Realistically, the decision is a family one. So we see at the top there, 42% of people say it will be me as the loved one jointly with another. Okay. And just finally here, for those of you who know your acorns, because no doubt we always talk about acorn whenever we have discussions with people, what we see here is actually the more likely, what we see is that the most affluent group, the affluent achievers, who are highly targeted group amongst a lot of private care home providers, 51% of those respond that it's a loved ones jointly with others discussion. In other words, this is a family decision. What we actually found was that the lower affluent groups were much more likely to be a one-person decision. So yeah, amongst comfortable communities and rising prosperity, other key sort of target groups for elderly care decision makers, again, we saw quite a lot of family decisions. So just to wrap up on this slide, what are we seeing is, yeah, firstly, don't just tailor your marketing messages to the residents. They don't make all of the decisions. They are actually often a relatively minor part. Secondly, you need to accept that different demographic groups will behave in different ways, and you need to target different messages to them. And finally, you need to be prepared, certainly if you're targeting the more affluent groups, you need to be ready to deal with a whole family panel in that decision-making process. So, to lead us into a discussion section, in summary, just from unpacking this one or two questions, what we've seen here is that the majority of decisions on care are made by loved ones as family decisions. Again, you probably knew a large element of that, but we've backed it up with those facts. What we've also seen is when locating care homes, we believe the focus needs to shift a bit more to where the key need is, and that is proximity to the loved ones and a little bit further away from those who are actually seeking areas of high elderly populations. And then finally, the location of homes and marketing messages needs to match the needs of those target demographics. So I'm going to stop speaking. I'm going to encourage you guys to turn your microphones off and put your hands up, or just blurt out with a question, or you can type a question in the chat, but why not just join in and start talking? Okay.
And if not, we might have to pick on individuals we're familiar with, I'm afraid.
Can I just hi, I'm Ben from Anchor. I just wanted to in the actual breakdown of the most important decisions, saw that obviously quality was second. I'm just wondering what the kind of parameters are that in terms of research, what that constitutes. So are we talking about like when someone physically goes and looks at a care home, or would it be more of, for instance, the Care Quality Commission rating or something like that? Because I know ratings were a lot further down, but just in terms of like some internal research we're doing at the moment is trying to ascertain how big a driver the Care Quality Commission rating from one home to another, even if they're in close proximity of each other, what impact that has.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's always difficult to sort of, when you ask a survey, to try and unpack that. But yeah, interestingly, as you say, reviews are way down. So yeah, they were down at about 7% response. So yeah, quality. Yeah, now that you raise it, you go, quality doesn't include a whole load of stuff. Now, yeah, we broke out quality of staff and the facilities as a separate measure, which is also important. But yeah, I think my reading of sort of how we worded that and how people would interpret it is the physical state of what is on offer there. But yeah, I guess implicit in some of that will also be an element of reviews.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted clarity on that, just because, like I said, it's pretty integral to what we're trying to do internally.
Yeah.
But no problem.
Oh, just one, Simon from Signature. Just one question on the data. I think, do you think those top big percentages are the drivers to get people interested in the home? Because it's really interesting to look at where you say social life and activities are way down. And obviously we put a lot of energy into, as part of the decision-making process, that mum or dad's going to be have a good life whilst they're in one of our homes. And obviously it's from your stats, it's not necessarily a driver for the decision makers. So is it a driver? So you're saying the top loss is almost a driver to get into the, to get the hook into the business, but actually, is there another set of stats that when you're in the home and you're visiting, that then that actually becomes the priority?
Yeah, and again, what we've sought to do here is to get a sort of broad view, and obviously, we've got some very different organisations on this call now, and yeah, if we were to now actually retarget this question and actually start to filter it down to specific people who are in your demographic target groups, you will see different responses, because obviously, you are up at the much more premium end, you're targeting different groups. Yeah, what we've done here is sort of put a sweep across the whole sector. But I think, you're picking up on a key point here, which is, make sure you are targeting to the real needs of your audience, get those messages across to your audience. What we're just saying is, as you alluded to, it might be son, daughter, not mum, dad that you're talking to here. And being nearer to son, daughter is possibly more, well, we believe is more important than being near to mum and dad.
Yeah, cool.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
Sure, Rachel, it's Jenny Bellwood, from occupancy manager from Anchor. Rachel in my team's also on the call. I'm sure you'll agree that we do see this, and actually we see people moving quite far from their original geographical location to be with to be with their daughters, sons, loved ones. So actually the geographical move can be, in some cases, hundreds of miles we've seen. So it doesn't come as a surprise.
Yeah. So question back to you guys then, what are your key factors when you are finding sites? What is the relative balance between those two sort of geographical factors, for example?
Well, we can't really comment on finding sites. We can, because we're being marketeers who try and fill our care homes. Unfortunately, we don't get involved with that. That would be our new developments team. But certainly in terms of our marketing to fill our care homes, we do talk to the relatives in the main. And that's where we tailor our messages.
What about others who are on the call? What is your focus? Because traditionally, we found it, and we're guilty of this. We've been sort of supplying systems and go, yes, you need to find a certain number of 75 plus certain demographics. Is that a key driver, or are you looking at that more balanced approach as a matter of interest?
I think Aidan from Signature, I think Simon will back me up. We sort of look at a bit of a blended mix of, where is that 55-year-old eldest daughter located? Where are the residents located, and what are the property values? It's a bit of a blend of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it needs to be that blend. But I would certainly agree.
Just to bring it back to the original question Ben asked, in terms of physically going and seeing somewhere to make that judgment call. Obviously, there's that, you've got to blend in that sort of intuition element. We kind of captured that in terms of the "it just feels right" response. There's always going to be that factor we have to build in, you know, people's sort of personal judgments and preferences, not just going on the data. So yeah, we always encourage that as well. So we any more final questions before we move on to the next section? Do you want to challenge us on anything? Do you think anything looked or felt wrong there?
I think it looks about right to me. The interesting one that never gets mentioned is, we always talk about the eldest daughter, but I know it's interesting. My wife's brother had a child, and he's the sort of latest grandchild, and the appeal to the grandparents is unbelievably powerful. I mean, seeing it firsthand, it's like nobody exists, only this child at the moment, and there's such a powerful sort of magnetism around. So whilst you talk about eldest daughter, I think that I don't know from a marketing play, too many companies play on the grandchildren. Just in terms of marketing, I'm not talking about, you know, targeting, but yeah.
That's interesting. I don't think I've had any experience of anyone targeting the grandchildren. No.
Yeah, there is obviously you can't directly target the grandchild, but you can certainly put a very powerful message out there about that. But yeah, it's an interesting play, very interesting play. But yeah, would certainly play to the heartstrings, wouldn't it?
Let's find those wealthy grandchildren, Simon.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to open all of your sites next to expensive children's wear shops.
Private, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Jojo Mama Bebe or whatever it is. Okay, any other thoughts, questions, comments? Gav, you just come on, put your camera on. I'm going to stitch you up. Anything else you want to raise on this before we move on?
No, just taking the kettle off, so I popped off. Caught me. You caught me.
Okay.
No, nothing to add. It's been very interesting so far. Thank you.
Good. Okay, shall we push on?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the second section, and again, we're planning on mixing up these webinars with different themes and different things that are current. And yeah, unfortunately, the theme that seems to be most current at the moment is cost of living. Trying not to use the word crisis in the title, but every single piece of press that you pick up uses that word. So in terms of over the next 10 minutes, I just want to unpack that and then get into a bit of discussion of, are you seeing any effects in your industry, in this sector? Are you doing anything to mitigate that? Should you be concerned? So listen up and hopefully find something useful that can form a discussion. So yeah, so whatever your news feeds that you're picking up, you're probably seeing all these headlines every day. Every meeting we have with a client, it seems to get mentioned in terms of how important the issue is it going to impact their work, how much it is. And yeah, what we're trying to do, some of you may know that during the COVID pandemic, we produced a sort of weekly tracker of how movement is taking place to sort of give a little bit of a sort of antidote to the news headlines, which sometimes seem to just be what they can see out the windows in Fleet Street or wherever they're all based now. So what we're hoping to do is actually help our clients to truly understand what's going on behind those headlines. So answering questions like, who is really being impacted, where is being impacted, how it will impact our organizations, and where are the best opportunities and where you might have to refine your offer. So that's what we're trying to do. And yeah, what we're going to be producing is we launched our first podcast yesterday. So if you can face listening to me for another 15, 18 minutes as it is, then we'll send you the link on that. This is a condensed version of that. What we're planning to do, and as I say, we started yesterday, is to produce a monthly view on what's truly going on in the cost of living. So we're using things like, we are running a quarterly survey to ask people actually what they're thinking, feeling, and doing. We are starting to track transaction data. So we get feeds of credit and debit card data by different sectors and by different brands, all anonymized. We are going to be looking to see, can we see that people are stopping spending with these brands or in these products and are cutting back on this and spending more proportionally on grocery? We're going to be monitoring that, and we've set a baseline for that. What we're also doing, and I'm going to touch on in a minute, is running scenarios of what do we think is going to happen, which people are most likely to be impacted and are being impacted. And also we're applying that to our expenditure forecast. So today I'm just covering the two blue ones of those, but over the next months, we will be tracking all of those. Okay, so to set some context, we've always known, and you guys have probably already known, that care home affordability varies fundamentally by region. So yes, here's a map. We can start to see that the Southeast does have higher disposable incomes than the rest of the country, and that probably reflects some of the shape of investment in the sector. But what you can also see on this map, and I'm pointing over there because that's where it is in here, but yeah, this map shows actually, whilst the Southeast may be the highest disposable income, that's actually a lot flatter, the gap, than you would see on actual incomes because of the higher cost of living in the Southeast. And we can drill into that using our paycheck data set, our paycheck disposable income tool, and we can see at a regional level where the West Midlands fits on all of these different elements. And we can see that there is quite a spread in terms of the proportion and volume of people spending on each of these things. But as you know, at CACI, we believe that you need to go down to a much more detailed level than just the regional level. You need to go down to the customer and the local level to truly understand affordability and opportunities. So what I'm going to do over the next few slides is just drill into two sources. And the first of those is our cost of living survey, which was carried out in a very similar way to the age one, the care one. And yeah, what we've immediately seen, let's just start at the national before we drill it down, is we can see that cost of living fear issue is a national concern. So 56% of people, when we asked them about a month ago, said, I am concerned for my personal and my family's finances. Big number. What we can also see is that there is a big regional play on this, that there is a spread. Now, Northern Ireland always behaves slightly differently, and sometimes it's small sample sizes. But yeah, we do see a variation. But as I said, let's now start to drill that down into types of people. So we obviously asked people around their age, and also we got their postcodes, anonymized it, and then could see their ACON types. So there is a clear age dimension here. So good news for your sector is that the older groups are generally less concerned. So 37% of people aged 65 plus said they were concerned, which is in stark contrast to the 25 to 34-year-olds, which were saying 65%. So 65% of this group concerned, only 37% here. There is also, as you would expect, an affluence dimension. So affluent achievers, a key target group for a lot of private care homes, 44%, vast contrast to those at the other end of the demographic spectrum of financially stretched at 59%, and the lowest income ACON category, urban adversity, at 64%. So no great shocks. It's a big issue. It's a bigger issue for those that are younger. It's a bigger issue for those on lower incomes. Okay, so we know that. Now, potentially this means that the private care home sector is slightly less exposed, as it tends to be younger groups that are more concerned. But as we've discussed, it is some of the middle-age groups that face the decisions. And also, don't forget about the large number of financially stretched and urban adversity that make up your increasingly stressed workforces, and they are worried. Okay. Now let's go into another question that we asked. This was this one, which was, what are you most likely to cut your spending on to help mitigate the impact of the rising cost of living? Again, we're going to be monitoring this quarterly. What you'll see is that we got a whole load of different responses that we led them to. And yeah, again, you'll see some logic and expectation here. But yeah, at the top of the tree is things like that you could class as leisure or a bit more luxurious. So eating out, eating fast food, getting takeaways, with 60% up there. Interestingly, and again, potentially more reassuring for you guys, house and home is right at the bottom. So as I put at the top, I think, yeah, our home remains our castle. Yeah, cutting our spend on our house and home is, for most people, the last resort, which may leave you a little more resilient. Okay, but now let's look at something else. Okay, savings made during COVID. Now, I think a certain MP a little while ago made a not particularly helpful statement that, well, we hear that loads of people saved money during COVID. That's how they can use those savings to help with the cost of living rises. Well, not particularly helpful. We asked a whole load of questions on this that we're unpacking into more detail elsewhere. But yeah, what we've generally seen is that the youngest groups have either spent those savings or were unable to make those savings due to their cost of living even during COVID. But 28% of the UK populations have got savings that they made during the pandemic. And again, potentially more reassuring news for your sector. The older silent generation and the baby boomer, apologies for the loss of baby on there, the baby boomer generation are the most likely to have made some savings, but Generation X, which is the sort of group in the middle that might be starting to help with the decisions, maybe not paying, are also likely to have not made as much savings as others. So on the positive side, we are saying that some of your groups are more likely to have saved during that COVID period and still have that money that they can spend. Okay, so next question, who do we think will be the most impacted? So far we've seen what consumers, individuals are actually saying is going to happen, but we wanted to actually augment this with some actually more predictive insight. So to do this, what we've used is our paycheck and paycheck disposable income models that we updated in late May to take account of the latest current year figures and the price rises that have already taken place. Now, this gives us a really good base to then run scenarios to understand who and where are likely to be impacted in the future. So let me put up a quite busy slide. These are the assumptions that I made when I ran this scenario. So we've got all the different levers that we can pull. So I'm not going to go through them all. If anyone wants to argue with me around my assumptions, then feel free to do so afterwards. But yeah, I've done a lot of reading to try and get here from various acronyms and ONS sites. So yeah, we've assumed that food and clothing costs are going to go up in line with inflation, which is currently at 9-point-something%. We are going to assume that gas and electricity, even above the initial rise that's already happened and is already in the base data, we're led to believe it's going to go up by 40%. We have made the potentially overly positive assumption that incomes are going to go up 3%, which again is based on research that we've done. So those are the assumptions that we applied. And what we can then do is we can apply them to every postcode, apply them to every Acorn group. And I've already alluded to Acorn, basically at group level, the most affluent, the least affluent at the bottom. And what we can see here is nationally, we were expecting a fall this year in disposable income of about £212 per person. Those at the top of the tree, potentially where their proportion of energy and essentials is slightly less, will actually be doing all right because of the 3% pay rise on their big pay probably offsets it. Okay, but at the bottom, big falls. Now, bear with me, I'm just going to unpack this a little bit more. We then produced this really busy chart that basically, the more color, the larger percentage fall of income. So the light blues, these are people whose incomes are going to fall by less than 1.5%. But yeah, if you get a lot of color, what we're seeing down here in the struggling estates is like this yellow bar. These are people who are seeing a 5 to 7.5% fall in their income, green 7 to 10%. So at the bottom income groups, we're predicting some serious alarming falls in income. But then the Chancellor stepped in. So they decided that that 40% further increase in fuel bills was even too hard for Rishi to take. And then what we did was we ran a new scenario. So sorry, this was the effect that it would have regionally if that scenario would play out. So the biggest falls in a lot of urban areas, some particularly hard hit areas of London, but also other urban areas. But then the Chancellor played the mini budget package, and he basically has given a rebate to everyone of £450 and a further rebate to the lowest income 8 million people of £650. So this is now the scenario we expect to play out. Okay, I've fuzzed out the one on the left. That's what it was before the Chancellor stepped in. And this is what we are seeing. So we are seeing, as a result of these changes, that actually quite a lot of groups now are seeing relatively small drops in income. But what we do have is a squeezed middle here that is just above the threshold where they get that extra 650 grand, sorry, 650 pounds. But we've still got some of the lowest income groups, struggling estates and difficult circumstances. Whilst there's a lot less colour in here than there was before the mini budget, there are still significant numbers of people who are going to see at least a 1.5% fall in their incomes. And also, interestingly, up much higher in the ranking of incomes, city sophisticates group likely to live in high rent areas, often in urban areas, who are still facing quite considerable challenges, but are not going to qualify for that extra rebate. So what does this mean for the care sector? Well, what we're seeing is a lot of the sort of private targeted groups and mature money and the likes are probably going to be reasonably immune at the moment. Likewise, places like Comfortable Seniors, but poorer pensioners are still very vulnerable. Now, there is the plan to give an additional £300 rebate, which will benefit some of these. But yeah, there are significant groups that are still impacted. Your staff certainly could be really facing a squeeze that could have knock-on effects to retention and to pay rises and ongoing costs. So those are what we are seeing. That is a summary of our longer podcast. So before we open up discussion, what we're seeing is, rising costs of living will have far-reaching impacts. Below the headlines, there are clear different needs for different demographic groups. You need to ensure that your messages around pricing and positioning address those risks in those areas most vulnerable. I believe the care sector may be more resilient than most in terms of that cost of living, but staff could be the most vulnerable in your groups that you're exposed to. But that's my views. Let's open up another discussion. What are you seeing and how are you looking to mitigate it? Over to you guys.
So I completely agree. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jenny, but we've definitely seen our staff impacted already. We've seen staff unfortunately leave to work at other care homes nearer their homes because of the fuel prices and things like that. I think it's a real worry, not so much in terms of, as you've said, people looking for care, the wealthier people, but I think certainly with staff in the homes it's having a real impact now, and I can only unfortunately see that getting worse.
Yeah.
And have you got anything yet in place to sort of mitigate that in terms of, how you're trying to improve retention rates?
So there's a lot of work being done. It's not my area of expertise, but yeah, there is work being done. I mean, certainly in terms of our most recent pay announcement, that was above inflation at the time, but of course things are changing and things are changing quite rapidly, and I think in the financial climate that we're in, with there's such a thing going back to the 80s of do you keep increasing wages? Can companies afford to keep increasing wages? And I think certainly with care, there's the impact that the last couple of years have had on the on colleagues as well. A lot of them are tired. A lot of them, you know, it's been times that we've never seen before. So I think, yeah, staffing's the real key crux here.
And to those sort of more premium providers and operators that are on the call, obviously you'll have seen that there's some material there to be confident about in terms of your target residents. But again, how are you thinking about how you approach these recruitment and staffing issues based on that cost of living?
I mean, I agree with what Rachel said. We all know that staffing the sector is a huge problem at the moment. It's a huge problem. We operate obviously at the top end of the sector. We have, you know, we probably have the luxury to be more competitive on pay rates than some operators in markets. We all know a lot, you know, you often hear it said it's not all about pay, but it sort of is all about pay right now. People are struggling. I don't know how home care companies can be surviving with staff. They must be in a real pickle with their staffing and transport costs. I think you just look at your whole value proposition with your employee base and try to offer them as much as you can, and support them as best you can. But it's really difficult. And you know, if the sector normally turns people at 35%, which we're told it does, and you know, I think it's not being said at the moment, but I think there's a structural undersupply of people in the UK to deliver across all sectors. Brexit has definitely played into it. The government are running silent on it, and it's a huge problem.
Absolutely. And yeah, we're seeing it in a whole host of parallel industries. I've just done a report literally last week around the nursery childcare market. And yeah, I know an operator that gave me a staggering figure of vacancies that they're facing. And yeah, I'm sure the same is happening in your area. Yeah, we're seeing the same in sort of leisure and hospitality as well.
And it's the dilemma. If you're constantly increasing costs, even at the super premium end, you know, it's difficult because you have, you know, you can't just continuously move price.
Yeah.
And you've got the CMA looking over your shoulder as well, as, you know, how transparent are you, et cetera. And, you know, you have an investor community, you know, wanting to move pricing in a very fluid way to sort of match, you know, short-term fluctuations in inflation rates. It's really tough to get the sort of balance right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Those external factors are coming from all directions. Basically,
yeah, and it's relevant. You know, and we were just talking about this, Simon and I, in a meeting earlier. Our 5% pay increase is another operator's 8%, and we're just trying to get that in terms of a quantum, and it just can't be endless sort of pay increases for residents.
Yeah,
definitely. You kind of alluded to it there, Aidan. So I'll kind of again pick on Gavin from the dom care and care at home angle. How are you sort of overcoming these challenges or planning to?
Yeah, there's a lot of things have already been mentioned. A lot of the issues that we're facing, certainly, especially in terms of the pay and then the fuel increases that we're seeing at the moment. Because obviously, a lot of our care pros are travelling about, and that's impacting them massively. When we're already, you know, we've already done some price increases to our clients to reflect the hourly rate that we're paying our care pros as well. So it has been a real tricky situation. I mean, we've gone through a bit of a stage lately where we are rebranding the name. So we've gone from caregivers to care pros. We're trying to professionalize the actual job title to try and make it a bit more of an attractive prospect, which is it has helped a little bit. We are seeing increases in terms of applications through for that. Okay. Yeah, it's just an ongoing tricky situation. I think the fuel price has really come at a really bad time, really, when we thought we got things a little bit in hand. Yeah, and that's having a massive impact on it. We've got some offices where they're actually taking care pros between visits, so that they're not paying out of their own pocket fuel.
Okay,
Makes
interesting.
sense.
What Gavin alluded to there, I think, is quite interesting in terms of having to combine marketing and recruitment more and more currently, and sort of seeing those two as tandem operations. So I wondered if anyone sort of had a bit more detail and experience on that in terms of bringing in new staff and focusing marketing efforts in that way rather than on residents and potential target decision makers. I think Anchor in particular might have some interesting thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, us at Anchor, ultimately it affects our occupancy. If we haven't got the staff to fill our care homes, then we can't fill them to the level that we need. So yes, we work very closely with our recruitment peers. Rachel and Sharon and Lauren, I'm sure, will be able to expand a little bit more on that. But yeah, we are absolutely probably working together more than we ever have in past times, I have to say.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Sharon. I totally agree with Jenny. We have been working all together now a lot more, especially since COVID, when a lot of staff went off, and it's going to be the same for the other care providers. Everybody knows that staff went off. There was an unbalance between residents and staff, and it was about making sure that people are feeling confident about coming in and staying with us, and it's about retention and so forth. And I think every company, doesn't matter what sector you're in, they deal with that. And just like Jenny said, if you don't have the staff, it's hard to get the people in to take care of them. So it's all about balance, and we've got lots of campaigns running, and we're working very hard coming up with new ideas and just making sure that people are happy when they come to us, which is what they will be, because we offer a great employment and so forth. And lots and lots of different campaigns. I don't want to give away too many secrets on this call, but we are working really, really hard. And there's so many different things, like I think in every sector there's an unbalance again of female to male carers, and it's filling them with confidence that anybody can come and work for us. It doesn't matter where you're from, what you do. And it's just like in the nursing world, there's always going to be more female nurses than men. It's just something that happens, and we battle with carers with that as well.
I think Gav made a really good point about professionalising the industry, because a lot of the colleagues that we have are absolutely amazing at the jobs. They're so passionate, they're so skilled. The knowledge of dementia care. They have to study to such detail. I think there is possibly a wider professionalising, and as Gavin quite rightly said, making it care and home care a more attractive proposition to young people coming into it. And just like care homes have to dispel in the myths of what the job is, I think, and what life in a care home's like. And I think just going back to the point of retaining and recruiting, I think unfortunately the double vaccine U-turn did care and a massive, it caused so much work, so much more recruitment for companies. We lost staff, and how after that do you bring people back in? It's been such a storm, really, the last couple of years, unfortunately.
I think there's the old saying is there's nothing like a recession to boost your staffing. Maybe it'll have some impact.
Well, yeah, that's true, yeah.
I know, because right now, if you think about it, if you're a 20-year-old, 22-year-old fresh out of uni, there's so many jobs out there.
Yeah.
And we still work in a sector where you have to wear a mask every day if you're on the floor caring for somebody. My wife has COVID at the moment. I've been going around wearing a mask for days. It's horrific.
Yeah, it's very easy to forget what that was like for a lot of us now. No, very, very, good point.
Yeah, it's a very rewarding job, but it's a tough job.
Yeah.
It is indeed.
Yeah, and you make a good point there. It is very rewarding, and that's definitely what the people who, like Rachel says, who have unparalleled experience, sometimes it's not about money for them. It's about the fact that they come to work and they get this amazing sense of worth, and they've helped somebody, and that above all stands for them. And I think that's really important in anybody's marketing.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Does anyone have any other sort of final comments or points about the cost of living piece in particular?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's not specific to recruitment, but it's just a general observation that I've certainly started noticing. Obviously rising fuel prices, etc. And it's just that there seems to be a bit of a paradigm shift with. I've certainly seen a lot more adverts on TV and stuff that seem to be around trying to get people to remain in their existing properties and spend money on adaptations and with that independent living thing. So that is potentially a potential issue to care. I think that without being a bit facetious, that there's a lot of, for instance, stuff out there where people are being encouraged to give up equity in the property so they can then spend money on doing adaptations and stuff as well. So I think that is probably going to be more prominent. I think particularly if we do go into a recession, which is looking increasingly likely. And obviously I'd expect that to have an impact on care sector as well.
Yeah, no, that'd be really interesting to keep on top of, rates in terms of how people are actually paying for their care in different ways. Keeping on top of that over the next couple of years and tracking all of that would be really crucial. Great. Well, I think we're pretty much up for time. So thank you very much all for participating and getting involved. It was really good to hear quite a good range of voices there. So yes, thanks a lot for joining. What we'll do is send around the slides, a bit more information on what we've been doing on the cost of living, and also a bit of a survey, so you can throw in there any ideas or sort of new thoughts you have on what we can do to sort of follow up on this. So we've got plans to do at least another 2 webinars that focus on sort of results and findings from the research. So if you had any sort of, we can basically put in the survey what we're thinking. If you had any additional thoughts, that'd be great. We'd really like to hear as much from you as possible and get you to sort of own and steer these webinars.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Thanks, guys. Bye.